عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Inshallah, we're going to go ahead and start with some of the soft stuff. I know people are going to keep trickling in, inshallah ta'ala. But the plan for today, the first part, we're going to talk about just again, refresher on important rulings about Ramadan. Some of the stuff, it's easy, we do it all the time. Some of the stuff we just forget. You know, what happens when you're sick, what happens if you're traveling, all these other things. So we'll cover some of these, the basics for Ramadan again. And after this, inshallah, when the South Quraysh is on his way here, we talked about, because when Ramadan comes, it's not just about, you know, fasting and going through the month, right? For us, especially as a community, we want to be able to cater to programs that we're going to offer to our community. So one of the things that we're also doing today is you know, we're going to let you guys know what our theme is for Ramadan. Last year, who remembers the theme? Who remembers the theme last year?
Siyam.
No, Siyam. No, that's not it. It was we put a lot of effort into the marketing, guys. And
Building bridges.
No, that was the first one. That was 2 years ago. Was building bridges. You remember that because of the shirt and the water bottles. The one after that, we did healing hearts, right? We did healing hearts, and you were talking about just the illnesses and the diseases of the hearts. This year's theme is going to be called Pious Paths, right? And inshallah, we'll get the material out to you guys soon enough so you can see the programming that's going to happen in the Masjid for our community. But it's Pious Paths, and it's about finding our way or finding inner peace despite the chaos and difficulties that we face in our lives, right? And again, part of it, this is influenced by what's happening in Gaza, what's happening to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, all these other struggles we see happening in Sudan, what's been happening in China, right? What's as a global ummah, the kind of stuff that's going on, and you know, getting examples from these people as well. How are they, you know, able to, you know, get online and laugh and smile despite all that they're going through? But we're going to take a deep dive into the stories that the Quran gives us and our history gives us, right? Some of them prophets, some of them regular people. But how did people persevere through the challenges that they had and were able to keep, you know, moving forward and keep a smile on their face and keep, you know, working for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for Fridays and Saturdays, that's going to be our 2 days where we're going to do our community program. Friday night, Saturday night, after the 8 rak'at of Taraweeh, we'll break and we'll have a nice, 20-minute session where we go into some of these stories. And our goal is to pull out, you know, every time we share a story, it's not just about the past. It's, you know, but what is it that kept these people going? Or that inspiration that despite the difficulties, the challenges they were facing, how they were able to constantly, you know, focus on what was most important. And so hopefully that will transfer into us so that we can implement that in the smaller challenges, the bigger challenges that we have. And obviously, you know, these are things we're seeing happening live when we have serious situations like what's going on in Gaza. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to give them relief. So after, you know, Friday, Saturday, after 8 rakat Tarawih, we'll have our nice little session. Alhamdulillah, we have 4 weekends, that's 8 days. So we have 8 stories, right? 8, actually 9, because one day we'll do 2. We'll have 9 stories from our history, some of them prophets. They're going to alternate, you know, one day will be the story of a man, the other day will be the story of women. So we're going to share, you know, we're going to make it, we have what an equal opportunity masjid here, right? We're going to make sure we have stories for brothers and sisters that people can relate to. But we learn from all of them, right? We learn from all of them. And there's a reason why Allah Azza wa Jalla told these stories in the Quran of men and women as well. So that's going to be our focus for our Ramadan theme, right? Pious paths, you know, I think I use a lot of peace, like pursuing peace through, you know, the stories of the righteous, right? That's going to be our theme. And so part of that, which the second part of today, is going to be about what is going to be our service project, right? And that's one of the biggest things we try to build. The past couple of years, we've done a few, you know, on-off projects. Inshallah, this year we'll also be doing a community-wide project with Ithar, with One Ummah, where we're going to go and, you know, get supplies and pack and all this kind of stuff. I don't know if you guys remember, it was last year or the year before, but we actually won a trophy. I have the trophy in my office, right? Because our community showed up in the largest numbers, we had the most supplies, we packaged the most boxes, and you saw me gloating up there with the trophy, right? And so you guys gotta make me proud again, right? And that was the year I left RCM and joined Jafar, so I was really happy. I was like, you know, I was making a joke out of it, right? But it was a proud moment, alhamdulillah. But the spirit of competition is something that Allah Azza wa Jalla encourages. وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ, right? Compete with each other to do good. The goal is to mobilize the larger community and to do more good. So inshallah we'll have that happening for the larger community. Inshallah we'll still have one of our food drives with Brother Rizwan that he does with the feeding the poor, and then the food drives we do with the Clarkson communities. But we need something bigger, right? We need something that's a little bit more, not one day, right? Because you come, you show up, that one day you do something, you feel good, you go home, but then you have all this other time in Ramadan. And we want to launch something more special. So we're going to talk about that in the second part. It's called the 40 Neighbors Project. But Assad is going to talk about that more in detail. But we want to offer the community an initiative that's longer lasting and that has an impact that's much more broader than just like, just feeling good for a day. And this is the kind of stuff that's going to take hard work, inshallah ta'ala. So we're going to dive right into some of our basics for Ramadan. I'm going to skip over some of the easy stuff really fast. But it's always important to reflect on the ayah of Ramadan. The ayah of Ramadan, right? We don't want to go over that too fast. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O you who have believed, fasting is made mandatory upon you, as it was made mandatory upon those before you, so that you may attain taqwa. Right? The translation says so that you may become righteous. And taqwa is the ultimate goal of Ramadan. Right? Taqwa is the ultimate goal of Ramadan. An easier understanding of taqwa is a state of obedience. A state of obedience. And when you look at what happens in Ramadan, right, you have people from all different walks of life. Right? People who pray 5 times a day, all of their sunnah, get up in the morning for the tahajjud, are in the masjid every single time they can, or are making dhikr throughout the day. And then you have the person that's just like struggling to get through Fajr and trying to I gotta pray Dhuhr on time, and you have all you have these extremes, and you have even the person that probably doesn't pray or fast outside of Ramadan, right? But you have these extremes. But in the month of Ramadan, what you see, and this is the miraculous nature of Allah's doings in this month, everybody's doing more. Everybody's doing more. The person that's not barely getting by on a regular day is showing up for Taraweeh. For most of the nights. We know not all the nights, right? We know what you guys are doing. But most of the nights, they're showing up for Taraweeh. They're praying a little bit. They're tolerating 8 raka'at, or they're doing something. They're pushing themselves. They're reading a little bit of Quran, right? They're waking up now before Fajr, right? It's hard enough sometimes to get up before Fajr. They're waking up before Fajr. And they're doing, they're getting ready for their suhoor, but that is also a religious practice, right? So they're making time for these things. So you see, in this month, Allah makes it easy for us to be obedient. And this is the miracle of Ramadan. That even the person that's not doing enough, all of the sudden is doing so much more in the month of Ramadan compared to where they are as soon as Ramadan starts. Now they're waking up before Fajr. They're not eating and drinking, for 16 hours a day. They're praying all their salah on time. They're coming to the masjid as much as they can, reading a little bit of Quran, turning off the stuff that's not good to listen to, and maybe playing something else, being more conscious about what they're doing. This is beautiful, and this is what Allah Azza wa Jal has done in this month. It's truly special. It's outside of you and my ability to change ourselves. The change is coming directly from Allah. It's coming directly from Allah. And this is Allah, intervening in your life in a way that just all of a sudden now you're more obedient. But what He's showing you is if you understand how special this is, you can make a change. When He's showing you, you are absolutely capable of making a change when you change certain things in your life, a lot of them having to do with perception. So 1 month of the year, Allah gives you where everybody just gets to be more righteous. And it's a beautiful gift. Because in this 1 month, if you fast and you do what you're supposed to do, Allah will forgive you your previous sins. So He's like, try your best the rest of the year, but I'm going to give you guys 1 month, right? It's like this beautiful little marketing deal or something, just fast 30 days, you get all your sins forgiven, start fresh, and all. We like this kind of stuff, right? It's how we're built. But Allah Azza wa Jal has given us this day. So the goal is obedience. And so in Ramadan, you find yourself already doing things that come naturally easier to you because of the environment of Ramadan. Your challenge now is to push yourself a little bit beyond that, as much as you can, right? So if you're coming to the masjid for, maybe 4 raka'at, stay for 8. If you usually stay for 8, stay for 10, 12, right? If you're reading a page a day, read more. If you can finish one Quran, try another one, or do as much as you can after one. Try to push yourself a little bit more. Getting up at that time for suhoor, do 2 extra raka'at. Since you're already up in the morning, after the sun rises, there's the Ishraq prayer. Do that prayer as well. Try to get all of your sunnah prayers in. There are easy ways to add on to the deeds that you're doing, and just to maximize the benefit of this month. Again, the goal is obedience. So how obedient can I be in this month? Let me really try my best. And Allah gives you something, and you can always do more. That's the beautiful thing. Allah will make a default for you to be able to come up to, but you can always push yourself to do more. So that's one of the goals of Ramadan. The benefits of fasting, obviously, we understand. There's a lot of it has to do with self-control. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but shaitan, the Prophet ﷺ said, shaitan runs to the son of Adam like the flow of blood. And so some of the scholars, they talked about how limiting food and drink and limiting, your ability to have that much nutrition inside of you weakens you. It naturally weakens you. So it weakens the flow of shaitan as well. It's one of the ways why you're more obedient, because you're, taking less of the dunya and focusing more on acts of the akhirah. And so you're lessening the flow of shaitan in your blood. There is some connection, which is why the Prophet would fast, not just in Ramadan, the Mondays and Thursdays, Ayyam will be the white days as they call it, when the moon is 13th, 14th, and 15th of the lunar calendar. So they're normal days that the Prophet would fast as well. And there are lots of lessons we get from Ramadan. Beginning of Ramadan, I'm going to spend like maybe 1 minute on this, guys. This is the way we do the way that the modern Muslim world starts the sighting of, or the month of Ramadan. You either sight the moon yourself. If you see the moon very clearly, like you have to tell somebody, and like you have to like take a picture, tell somebody, show somebody, whatever. But it's a sign of that's how we start the month of fasting. You either inform by a witness of sighting, which is what the majority of us do. We just wait until we get an announcement, and then we're told that the month has started. If nobody sights the moon, but the month of Shaban completes 30 days, then obviously it's automatically Ramadan. And then utilizing calculations, which is another method of making sure that we start and stop the month. And the way we do calculations is it's based off the sightability of the moon, right? It's not based off of non-Muslim calculations. It's based on Muslim calculations that are on the sightability of the moon, and they have specific criteria how high above the horizon the moon actually needs to be able to be physically sighted. And then they have those moon maps that can help you. And by the way, everybody that relies on sighting right now relies on calculations to know when to sight. Because I guarantee you go ask people like, hey, when are you going to go sight the moon? They have no idea what month it is, what day it is, what phase of the moon it is, right? Everybody relies on calculations to some degree in order to at least find the moon and sight it, which is why in your moon sighting committees you always have the astronomers and the scholars and everybody there with their giant telescopes and all this stuff, right? But these are the multiple ways you can start it. All of them are acceptable. Nothing wrong with any one of them. And I think there are certain countries that go off of calculations. There are certain countries that go off of sighting. There are certain countries that follow. There are even certain countries that follow Saudi. That's their official position. The Masjid here, most of them, they just follow the Saudi sighting, right? There's better ways to do things, but that's what we do right now. But inshallah, for the sake of unity, that's what we stick to doing. So we know the start and end of fasting. We know what time that is. Generally speaking, for most of us, we've been doing this for a long enough time. We'll give you the timetable. Don't want to spend too much time on that. But who must fast? Who is fasting obligatory upon? You obviously have to be Muslim. And you have to be what's called mukallaf, which is you have to be at the age of puberty. So the signs of puberty must be visible for boys and girls, for them to be responsible, held accountable for fasting, right? And so it's always smart to start the kids off before that age, not to wait until they're like, hey, now you're 12, now you see signs of puberty, you gotta fast tomorrow. It's gonna be huge. It's gonna be very difficult for them. So starting them off early, letting them fast half a day, making it a habit. When they get old enough, they'll get excited about, I want to do my own first day. Let it progress over the years, right? So kind of like Salah, the Prophet ﷺ said, start at 7, teach them at 7, discipline them at 10, right? Because it becomes mandatory after that. So start young, let them build it up over the years, and then, once they get to the point where they have to fast, it's not going to be a brand new experience for them. They're going to be able to actually handle it. A little thing about bulugh, or what we call maturity, if the signs of puberty are not visible on any child, 15 is the maximum the scholars have given, right? So some children, they can wait until 50 because there's no signs of puberty showing on them, but 15 is the cutoff. A lot of them said that's enough. Now they're old enough, they need to start doing what they got to do. And then you have to be mentally and physically capable, right? Physically capable, obviously the exception is if you're sick, that can be temporary or permanent. Mentally, meaning you have to be what the scholars called sane. When we say, again, we're using terminology that has different connotations now. But sane meaning you are in control of your senses, you don't have any mental disabilities, right? Meaning you're able to understand what you're doing. You're able to understand the purpose behind what you're doing. So anyone that has a mental disability, not required to fast, and then any physical incapability, not required to fast. Some things that come up if somebody.
Quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just
Sorry.
quickly about the scholarly definition of sanity.
Mm-hmm.
We know, like, there could be people who are kind of challenged, but they understand the concept of akhirah.
Yeah.
Um, what is their what's upon them for fasting and salah?
Best to kind of like go example like case by case. Best to go kind of case by case. I mean, so if a person can, so if they do pray, their prayer is accepted. It's fine.
Okay.
But there are people that may not like anything that's diagnosed as a mental disability. Like we would do that. But anything that literally gets in the way of you understanding why. So Down syndrome can or cannot, depending on a case by case basis. Some people are very capable. They have a mild case of it. Some people have severe case where they're not. They're
like for someone, for example, autism, right?
Yeah.
You can be autism, but you're challenged, but you're still aware of certain things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, if the person understands and they're willing to do it, all good and great and dandy. But if you find it difficult for them to understand and do it, then you don't have to push it, because they do have a mental disability, which is probably getting in the way of other things as well. So it's understandable. So it's a pretty loose. There's no like specific definition. You go case by case, and like it's just whatever the diagnosis. Because even autism, there's a spectrum, right? There's like it's not severe, it's severe. So that's with old elderly people, dementia, that also counts. So if a person can't even remember after praying, they're not required to pray because they can't even keep track of like did I pray, did I not pray? So they have, so that's those are some examples of what we would call like eventual mental disabilities as well, that they just cannot, they don't know, like they have no clue like what day it is, what time it is, what am I supposed to do? So not required at all. You don't have to push those people to do any of those things, inshallah. If anyone accepts Islam in Ramadan, technically yes they are, because they're Muslim. Technically they are required to fast, but please don't just bring them to me because we want to be very careful. New Muslims, it's a child starts fasting for the first time. It's a scary concept. Not going to eat for 14, 16 hours a day. They might have other issues that they're going through. So we prioritize these things, right? We prioritize these things. So we can encourage them, we can help them, but they're going to be forgiven a lot of this stuff because they're brand new to this, right? So we don't want to push it on them. Because technically, as soon as a person becomes Muslim, everything that's required of a Muslim becomes mandatory. But you cannot dump, all of that on a brand new Muslim. They have to take it bit by bit, and that's the wisdom part of giving da'wah. So again, if somebody does accept Islam in Ramadan, please bring them to the masjid. Let us talk to them, and we'll help them with that. This is a funny case. Anyone who leaves Islam then comes back during Ramadan. There's a case the scholars mentioned. So let's say you start the day, you're fasting, and then you decide you no longer want to be a Muslim, and then you haven't ate anything for the rest of the day, and then you come back to Islam. Does your fast count or not? No, because you have to be Muslim to fast too, right? So these are just like scenarios the scholars would come up with sometimes, and it might be that somebody says or does something stupid, and they're like, oh my God, you're not a Muslim anymore. But they would have to make up the day, right? They would have to make up the day. I just put it in there because there's some funny things in books of fiqh that sometimes come up. So exemptions from fasting, there's two main ones. They have some details. So an illness and a traveler, right? An illness and a traveler. So illnesses are of two types, right? An illness that is not life-threatening, or something that's just, it's not gonna like you have a headache, right? If you have a headache, it's not that big of a deal. Like it depends on the headache, right? If you have a headache that you can't get out of bed, you're sick. If you have like a little headache, which you're gonna get because you don't have your coffee because you're fasting, like that's not an excuse to not fast, right? So that doesn't qualify as an illness, right? But if you get the flu, anything we call anytime you can say I am sick, right? You have flu-like symptoms, you have coughing, you have sore throat, your body is aching. That's all considered sick. It is a looser definition, but you want to be just honest with yourself, right? Like if you bump your knee somewhere, you're not sick, right? You just bumped your knee, you can still fast. Right? That's not an excuse for you to give up fasting. But if you are sick, it's not life-threatening, it's a virus or something that's going to go around a few days, it'll be cured, you have the choice. You can break your fast and not fast for that duration, or you can continue on fasting, right? So the sick person has a choice. If they can bear it, it's better for them to go through with it, because making fasts up is problematic. But if it's not life-threatening, you still have the choice because it's still called an illness. And then there are illnesses that are either life-threatening or they don't have a cure, meaning you have a chronic illness. You're not getting better. So you have something that if you don't eat or take nutrition for, it's going to cause you to really suffer, right? So you have some kind of an illness like that. Then again, the Quran tells you if you can bear it, it's better to fast. If you can bear it, right? It's better to fast for as many days as you can. But if they can't, then you're allowed to. You don't have to make those days up. You just pay the fidya, which is for a poor, because you're not going to be able to fast. In your foreseeable future, you're not going to be able to fast because this is an illness that's not going away. And one of the things that qualifies for this is old age, because you're only going to get older, you're only going to get weaker, right? Technically. So at an old age, if you can't fast, you just feed a poor person. You don't have to worry about making the days up because it's just not something that's you see getting better. So it depends on the kind of illness, whether you make up the fast or you just pay the fidya, right? So there's no need to make it up if there's no cure for what you have and you can't fast because of it. But if you just have the flu for a week, you got to make those days up, right? You got to make those days up. And then the traveler also has a choice. The traveler also has a choice. They can break their fast or they can keep their fast. And in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba did both. Some of them would fast, some of them would break their fast. The Prophet ﷺ even broke his fast while traveling to let people know it's okay to actually break their fast. There's no better option. It's a choice. And that when you have a choice, it's the same. It doesn't matter. You can't pretend like if you were fasting on a trip and somebody else was not, you cannot feel better about yourself like I'm more pious than this guy. That doesn't exist. Allah has given a choice. Both of them are acts of obedience. You're obeying Allah if you take the exemption. You're obeying Allah if you don't take the exemption. So there's no better option. It's just, what do you want to do? You want to make up the fast later? If you think you can't, just go ahead and fast. Because really, traveling is not that big of a deal. A lot of us can still fast while we're traveling. But again, you can still choose to give it up. Because let's say you go to Dallas and they have a lot more halal restaurants. And you're not going to get to eat as much when you come back to Atlanta. So you can break your fast with this. What is considered traveling? There are about 5 million different opinions on what's considered a traveler. What's a traveler? When are you officially traveling?
When you change zip codes.
When you change zip codes, so you go from here to Alpharetta, 30022 and 30021.
40 miles.
40 miles.
Outside the city.
Outside the city. Alpharetta. I live in Alpharetta. I'm traveling now.
You know when you're traveling.
You know when you're traveling? How do you know when you're traveling?
Mention that you're going to travel.
Yeah.
There, you know.
That's the opinion I prefer now. When you were saying, okay, I gotta go on a trip, I'm traveling. You're traveling. The distance one does not make as much sense anymore. The distance opinion is from a long time ago, where cities were structured very, very differently. And technically, your travel would start according to the original opinion. Again, all of this is deduction. There's no official statement from the Prophets of Allah, which is why you have 15 different opinions, right? Whenever you get to the end of your city, after that point, you're considered a traveler. So you start the mileage from after that point. A lot of us, if you do the miles, you do from your house to your location. They would say, no, it's after you've passed the last building in your city. So what's the last building in Johns Creek going that way?
That's very near.
Yeah, but I mean, which is the last building? You have no idea, right? The structure of cities is so different today. There's no way to follow those opinions anymore because it's too difficult. And your mileage has to start from that point, outside of the city, the last building, and to the city where you're actually going to be going. So there's really no way to stick to those opinions anymore. And again, it's 49 miles is I think one of the official opinions, right? But somebody pointed out rightly, what if you went 48.99 miles? Right, you're 48.99 miles, so you're not a traveler. You take one step and you're a traveler. If you go this way, you got to pray all for it. So that it's not a very reliable way to pin down an opinion, right? But a lot of scholars have now just gone to it's the custom of what you call traveling. If what you're doing is called traveling, it's traveling. If it's called a commute, it's a commute. I went to Fayetteville last night, 49 miles. I looked it up and I was like, dang, it's exactly 49 miles, right? 49 miles exactly from my house. But I don't consider it traveling. I'm not traveling. I'm going to drive, I'm going to give a talk, I'm going to come back. It's just a commute, right? That's all it is. But if I went to Fayetteville, I packed my bags, I booked a hotel, and I'm going to spend a few days, that's traveling. It's what you call traveling is traveling. And I'm clearly leaving where I am. I'm leaving my city, I'm leaving my locality, right? So when you're traveling and you know when you're traveling, you can break your fast or you can choose to keep it, right? Old age, we mentioned that as well. So upon those who are able to fast but with hardship, a ransom, the fidya, of feeding a poor person each day is due, and whoever volunteers more, it's better for them. But to fast is better for you if you only knew. So even people with old age, with illnesses, if they can still push themselves and fast without sacrificing their health, it's better for them, right? Fasting is better. So if they can fast 15 days, let them fast 15 days, and then pay for the rest of it, right? And then maybe if they're able to, they can even make up those days at a later time because they're going through that. Specific rules for menstruating women. Obviously, when you're menstruating, you're not allowed to fast. The issue happens now with our sisters again is when it stops. It starts and when it stops, right? So let's say you start the day fasting and then it starts, but obviously as soon as it starts, you're no longer considered a fasting person. When you are no longer considered a fasting person, right? You are allowed to start eating and drinking, right? And I say this sometimes for we have different cultures, right? A woman does not have to pretend to fast if she does not have to. Allah has given you the freedom. You don't have to do it anymore. You don't have to fake it. I remember we get complaints sometimes, from some of our girls and some of our sisters that we still have to get up in the morning and have suhoor because everybody can't know that we're on our menses. There's no such thing, guys. Like the way that the Prophet ﷺ talked about these things is very open. These ayat are in the Quran. The hadith are there for us to read. These were not hidden issues in society. It's a very normal part of human anatomy, and it's just something that people need to understand. We've had situations where brothers have caught their sisters eating, and they've yelled at oh my God, she's not a Muslim because she's not fasting. Have no idea what menses are, right? This is not healthy for a young man who's old enough to not know what this is, right? It's not healthy, and it's also reducing your Islamic knowledge because these are clear rules mentioned in the Quran. So again, when you're menstruating, you're not allowed to fast. You're allowed to eat and drink and all of that stuff. If you become pure before sunset, before Maghrib time, some of the scholars, they say that she should refrain from everything as normal and as well as make up that day. That's just one opinion. You have to make up the day because you didn't fast that day, but you don't have to stop eating and drinking, right? Because you didn't start fasting, so you're not actually fasting at all. So this is an opinion that maybe that's where this stuff comes from, that you still have to pretend like you're fasting even if you get to that time of purity. Yeah.
In that case, our women, our girls, can they eat in public?
Yeah. I mean, there's these are things when it's time to pray, they don't pray. So they can if they're allowed to eat and drink because it's haram for them to fast in that time. And then and again, that's the problematic part. If we're pretending to fast, but it's haram for you to fast, meaning you cannot have the intention for fasting, then just eat something in the day, and so you're not not doing that. There's no harm in eating in public and all this kind of stuff because they don't have to fast. It's different that other people don't understand. That's their problem, right? But it's not something none of that becomes haram. We can't make it disliked or haram. We just can't make those rules up. They have to be communicated to us through evidence and things like that. So suhoor, have your suhoor. The Prophet ﷺ said there's barakah in suhoor. And what time does your suhoor stop? How many minutes before Fajr?
40 ayah. The
Yes.
reading equivalent to 40 ayah before adhan.
Before the
Adhan.
before the adhan, because the adhan could be made after
No,
Fajr
before
time.
this, not the sunrise. It's the dukhul waqt al-fajr.
Yeah, so before the actual time of Fajr, you can eat and drink up until the actual time for Fajr. Now, every year, you're going to get a schedule from this masjid, you're going to get a schedule from ICNF, you're going to get a schedule from Hamza, you're going to get a schedule from Maryam, and the Fajr time is going to be sometimes 15 minutes apart. 15 minutes apart. There are different calculations that people use. Follow your masjid. That's the only solution. You're not going to figure this out. Just follow your masjid. People are using different calculation methods, and that depends on what angle the sun is under the horizon, according to that opinion, when Fajr starts, right? But just follow your local masjid, which you're at. We have families where the husband does one and the wife does the other. It's really funny. Every Ramadan, the husband I do the early time, the wife is like, no, I'm going to the later time. Because the other time that we give. We follow the 15-degree opinion, and I think most masajid follow that opinion as well, and we're consistent with that throughout the year. So whatever schedule we give you, if this is your masjid that you follow, then just follow it, that's fine. But up until the time, so Fajr starts at 6:05, then 6:04 and 59 seconds. 6:04 and 59 seconds you can keep eating, right? That's just what it is. there's this thing that if you have a morsel in your hand and you hear the adhan for Fajr, that you can finish, if it's already on its way to your mouth, you can kind of put it in. I remember one of my sheikhs when he was telling us about that. Somebody asked the question, it's like, Sheikh, what if the whole plate is in your head? can you finish the whole plate? Yes, brother. Yeah.
So, in some schedules, it says imsak, which is like 5 minutes before the
Yeah.
time of pleasure.
Yeah.
So, my understanding was stop 5 minutes before.
That's a cautionary thing some people put in there. And again, you can there's nothing wrong in following that. There's nothing wrong in stopping early whatsoever. But the time actually does go all the way up until the Fajr time. They do that as a precaution so people don't accidentally. It's really sad that we have to tell people to not accidentally eat after time, right? If we're that consumed with eating rather than the time of actual starting fast, we can trust people to know that, like, just stop eating before Fajr time, and that'll work. But again, some people follow that religiously, but that's not. Like, you're not sinful if you continue after that time. You're sinful if you eat after the time for Fajr. Fajr actually starts.
What was that again? If it was right at that time of pleasure, and let's say you still have not finished your drink.
No, you can't. Yeah. So once the time starts, the eating and drinking stops. Yeah. Once the time starts, eating and drinking stops. That's just the best way to go. If you have something in your mouth, you can swallow it. And if you're putting it in your mouth, you can go ahead and finish it, right? It's not that strict, but I mean, you can't just like, well, I want one more bite. No, like once the time starts, inshallah. And then iftar, breaking the fast, encouraged to break it as soon as it's time. There's a specific hadith, لا يزال الناس بخير بعجل الفطر. People will continue to be in a good state as long as they hurry to break the fast. And hurry means as soon as it's time, not delayed. Our Shia brothers and sisters, they have an extended time. I remember I was at an iftar where there was a Shia imam, there was myself, and so we had our iftar, and about like 15 minutes later they had their iftar, right? So they have an extra amount of time that they've added to their iftar. And the Prophet told us, as soon as it's time, you break your fast. There is no righteousness in adding an extra minute for whatever reason you're thinking. The righteousness is in following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. As soon as it's time, you break your fast. And the sunnah is to break it with ripe dates, then dried dates if you don't have ripe dates, which are the soft ones, and dried dates. And then if you don't have that, with water. It's a sunnah. You can break it with pizza. It's not a big deal. But the sunnah, the barakah, the righteousness, the spirituality comes in following the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ, right? Whatever you eat or drink will break the fast. And for this year specifically, please make sure your dates are not from Israel, because we should be boycotting those dates as well. Yeah.
So again, the Maghrib time or iftar time, I know some masjids add 3 to 5 additional minutes at their Maghrib time.
Yeah.
So when you look at sunset, it will say, 6 o'clock, for example.
Yeah.
The calendar is 6:03 or 6:05. And of course, when you eat it, break your fast at 6 o'clock,
Yeah.
then everybody's going to look at you.
Yeah.
So,
No, so as soon as it's Maghrib time. I don't think we do that here. So we have the sunset time, because the sunset time is the time when the sun has gone below the horizon. Right? And so that's, as long as it's the sunset time, you can break your fast. And again, they do that. I know that some people are like, somebody told me one time too, so you need to add 3 minutes or 5 minutes to Maghrib out of caution. And I was like, well, how much caution should I have? A 10-minute caution? A 5-minute caution? Is 2 minutes enough? 3 minutes? So when you get into these things, there's no determining factor as to what is the right way to. How do you determine the caution, right? If it's sunset time and you know it's sunset time, right? That's all you need to know. It's actually sunset time. So if you want to be cautious, well then how cautious do you want to be? If you want to be more cautious, how about we at 20 minutes? But nobody's going to want to wait 20 minutes until so that just becomes the issue. When we try to add things on our own, it's always problematic, and it makes things even more. The deen is very simple. The Prophet said, "Ad-deen yusr." The deen is ease. Sunset time, it's sunset time. You can eat. It's Fajr time. It's Fajr time. You need to stop eating, right? And so that's how you're doing it. By the way, we have no idea what the actual time is, right? Because the Dhuhr time is all this is based off of the sun. So the Dhuhr time is when the sun has passed its highest point, right? And so if I tell you, like, okay, what's the caution about that, right? You have the time for Dhuhr, but how do you know it's enough past the point? Like, we don't worry about that, but it's the Salah time, right? The Asr time is when the shadow of an object becomes, the same size as its actual length, right? And so how do you know the time that you have? What's your caution for making sure that time is, did you go and measure an object or not, right? So we're doing things ourselves. It's been figured out for us, alhamdulillah. We have it easy. So it's fine for you to follow those things, inshallah ta'ala. Thought continued. Yes, dua. Iftar time is a time for dua. I cannot emphasize how important that is. ثلاثة لا ترد دعوتهم. There are three people whose dua will not be rejected. Meaning Allah will answer it in a multiple. Either He'll give you what you want, or He'll do something better for you. All of these things. There's possible responses, but there is no rejection of your dua. You will get something out of your dua. Al-Imam al-Adil, a just ruler, was sa'im hatta yuftir, the fasting person until they break their fast, wa da'watul mazlum, and the dua of the oppressed person. Right? So Allah doesn't necessarily give you what you want, but He doesn't reject your dua. He stores it and does something with it. He gives you some kind of a response. So the time of iftar, meaning the time right before, it's Maghrib time, that's dua time. And then when you break your fast, it's dua time. And then right after that, it's all of that time is a time for dua. And so do your best to engage in that time. And, so even at home, like we'll just sit everybody down. It's like, look, you want to make dua, you don't want to make dua, but everybody just get quiet, right? We're just going to sit and we're going to make dua. Everybody should be sitting before the time, and help your spouses at home to have stuff ready so they can also make dua at iftar time. I know some of our sisters are so busy and making iftar a nice nice experience for everybody, but they also need to know that they should be making dua as well. So we need to be helping them out. The whole family needs to be helping out, making sure everything's ready and done, so everybody can enjoy that time for dua. So things that break your fast. Obviously marital relations, you must, but this is one, if you do this, you must make up the day and pay the kafara. The kafara is either, again, this is the order, freeing a slave, fasting 2 consecutive months, or feeding 60 people. And this is the order. So if you can't do the first, you do the second. If you can't do the second, then you do the third. So for most of us, it'll be fasting 2 consecutive months. 2 consecutive lunar months, not January, February, right? So Ramadan, the ones that come after Ramadan. But you have to do 2 consecutive months. You cannot skip a day. You have to fast. That's the kafara for breaking your fast with marital relations. That's the big one. Any release of seminal fluids, whether it's through masturbation or anything similar, will break your fast. And then you have to make up the day. No kafara. Kafara is only for the first category. Okay? Unless you're a Maliki, then it applies to everything that you intentionally break your fast with. But that's a different opinion. It's a minority opinion here. And then again, the exemption from this is if it happens outside of your control, right? Because that can happen outside of people's control as well. So if you have seminal fluids that are released, during sleep or anything else, not because you were doing something, then it's forgiven. But you must make up the fast if that is something that happens intentionally. And then eating and drinking. Eating and drinking obviously breaks the fast, only if it's intentionally. You'll see a pattern here, by the way, right? Intentionally, intentionally, intentionally. So eating and drinking intentionally will break your fast. So they'll say eating and drinking and whatever is considered eating and drinking. This has been developed over time because some of these things have changed over time. But if you do it completely unintentionally, you forgot. Like, if your habit in the morning is to pick up a donut and put it in your mouth, and you just did that in the morning, then you're, like by accident, you haven't broken your fast, right? You haven't broken your fast. That is what it is. You can go with me, no worries. But if it's completely unintentional, meaning you took a bite and you were like, oh my God, out of here, like it's actually unintentional, right? It's not fake unintentional. It's actually unintentional. It's forgiven. And the hadith even says it's Allah who gave you to drink and gave you to eat, so you don't have to worry about it. You just continue on fasting. Water, if it goes through your stomach, through any cavity in your body, will break your fast. Any form of nourishment received through the veins, right? So if you get an IV put inside of you, and it's giving you nutrition, that breaks your fast. Now, the obvious question is, if you're in need of an IV to give you nutrition, you're sick. You're not supposed to be fasting, right? There's a medical emergency here that you need this, right? But you can't say like, I'm gonna keep fasting. No, your fast is broken because you're getting an IV. But any kind of things you get through the veins, I think it'll come next, that is not considered nutrition will not break your fast, right? Vaccines will not break your fast. They're non-nutritional. They don't give you anything. They don't give you any kind of nutrition. They're non-nutritional, right? They're a different type of shot that you get. But again, any of this happens, you make up the day, and that's the only thing you have to do for this. Losing a lot of blood or giving blood will break your fast, right? So if you get injured and you lose a lot of blood, and that's just determined. Like if you get a cut, have a little bleed, you can patch it up with a Band-Aid, you're fine, you can wrap it, it's fine. But if you lose a lot of blood, that breaks your fast. Giving blood breaks your fast as well. So in Ramadan, do it either after iftar and things. I think actually, technically speaking, if you're fasting, you're probably not going to be healthy enough to give because it takes something out of your, like it weakens you as it is, right? So you're probably not going to be able to physically give blood anyways. But hijama is one of those things that you get done where, you know, they put the suction cups on your back and they take the blood out. That's a difference of opinion amongst the scholars, but it's just safer because it's, you know, blood coming out of your body, to consider that as something that breaks your fast. Unintentional loss of blood due to injury is an exception. So like this is, and then, I don't know, this doesn't make too much sense here. If you lose a lot of blood, you'll break your fast. Because if you lose a lot of blood, you need to go to the hospital, and you're not supposed to be fasting, right? So that's sometimes it'll work things, but you have to think about what's going on. If I'm losing a lot of blood, I'm not just standing at home, right? I need to go to the hospital. Why am I losing a lot of blood? So that will just break your fast. Don't worry about fasting that day. Intentional vomiting. The Prophet ﷺ said, if one while fasting has a sudden onset of vomiting, no worries, continue to fast. But if you intentionally vomit, right? If you intentionally vomit, then you must make up for that day. And if you know someone, or you know you have issues with eating disorders, please have them come and talk to us, because there's rules around that as well. There's a little bit of leeway, because if someone actually has a disorder, then we have to be mindful about what's going to happen to them if they fast, or is it going to make that disorder worse, or are they going to have other kind of mental health breakdowns or something. So that's a whole different category of people we have to consider now, and it's not just by default that they have to fast, because they actually do have an eating disorder, or they might be suffering from some kind of mental illness that needs to be kept in mind when dealing with what they're going through. Some frequently asked questions. I'm going to go down the list. You tell me if it breaks your fast or not. We'll do trivia here. Inhalers.
No.
There's probably a difference of opinion on each one of these, by the way. But inhalers, I heard no. Is there a yes? So there's difference of opinion, but it's no. And why is it no?
It's not nutrition.
It's not a nutrition.
No, you're not eating or drinking anything. You're not eating or drinking anything. It goes to the lungs, right? It doesn't go to your stomach. It goes to your lungs. You're not eating or drinking anything. It's non-nutritional. It's like like oxygen. It's not going to break your fast, right? If you're walking and like dirt flies in your mouth, it's not going to break your, like those are things that are not going to matter. Vaccines, we already mentioned it. Vaccines are non-nutritious. They're not going to break your fast. Pills,
Yes.
you're eating. It's going to your stomach, right? You're putting a pill. If you have to drink water, even if you can swallow it without drinking water, you're still doing the act of eating and putting something. So it's not nutritious, but it's like eating, right? You're putting something intentionally in your mouth. You're swallowing it and going down your stomach. IVs?
Yes, you already say yes.
Yes, IVs, yes. Insulin?
Yes.
No.
No.
Insulin is non-nutritionist. So insulin is fine. Eye drops, ear drops?
Mm-mm.
No? Do we have a yes?
It goes to your, sometimes.
Yeah, so all you have to do is be careful that you don't put so much that it goes down your throat. Usually, it's not going down your throat. Eye drops are usually not going down your throat, or if you feel it, you can spit it out or something, right? But eye drops, ear drops, if necessary, are fine. If better to avoid. If necessary, they're okay. Same thing with nose sprays. If necessary, like if you have a serious allergy problem, if necessary, it's fine. Just be cautious about, because you can feel it. If you spray something in your nose, you can feel it in the back of your throat. You can spit it out. So it's like doing the rinsing your mouth when you're doing wudu. You have to be careful not to swallow the water. You're actually putting water in your mouth, which is worse than the nasal spray. Nasal spray, not putting water in your mouth. When you're doing wudu, you're actually putting water in your mouth. More of a chance of you accidentally swallowing water, right? So nose sprays are fine, just be cautious and use maybe less, or do it from a distance, whatever you gotta do. If you can avoid it, if you can do it at suhoor time, iftar time, all of that is better. But if you absolutely need to, it's not gonna break your fast, right? Because man, you're going 16 hours a day, not eating or drinking anything, one puff and poof, no, that's not gonna break your fast, right? Because again, it's meant to stay in your nose. All right, quickly now, making up missed days. It is preferred to make up the days as soon as possible. Do them in succession if you can. It's not obligatory. It is not permissible to delay them until after the next Ramadan. Now you're sinful. If you had a whole year to make it up, if you had no valid excuse to delay it until after Ramadan, now you're considered sinful. And some of the Sahaba, they said if you do that, you have to make up the day and pay the fidya, and pay the fine for feeding one poor person for each day, or feed a poor person for each day. Because you have a sin, you need to do more than just the normal thing. But a valid excuse can be I have one fast to make up. So the day before Ramadan starts, I'm going to make up my fast on that day. You've been given that time. You've been given that time. But on that day, you become sick. So you can't fast. Is that a valid excuse? Yes. It's a valid excuse. You had no idea you were going to become sick, right? And you had the day to fast. So you're not sinful because you had the day to fast. You became sick, it's out of your control. So then you don't have to worry about it. You can then that day you have a valid excuse. You can make it up until after Ramadan. So even Aisha radiallahu anha, she said herself, I used to have fasts of Ramadan left over, but I could not make them up until Sha'ban, which is right before Ramadan. So even Aisha radiallahu anha would make up her fasts in the month before Ramadan, even though the rest of the year had gone by. You're allowed to use the whole year to do it. Better to get it out of the way as soon as possible, but you're still allowed. And then if you can't because something happens, like you get sick, you're excused. Yeah.
So I was watching you online, like on Instagram on the way here, and
Yeah.
I heard you talk about when a woman's menstruating. Does
Yeah.
she have to make up any of her days?
No. When
Okay.
you're menstruating, no making up prayers, no making up fasts.
Okay.
Sorry. Fasts, yes. I just can't believe I answered that so fast. No making up prayers, but fast, yes.
So if
Fasting
you
you have to make up.
So if you're menstruating, you do not have to fast. I mean, you don't have to fast, but
You
you,
don't.
have to
Yeah,
make
you
it up.
cannot fast that day because fasting during menses, praying during menses is not allowed. But
Yeah.
prayers you don't make up, fasting you make up.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So
you
if
have
you
to
did-
finish the days because Allah in the Quran He says وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ. You have to complete the days. So the number of days. So if you miss any day, you make it up. You have to
So you
complete
just
the
have
day.
to feed a homeless person.
No. So you make up the day.
You make up the day.
You
so-
make up the day only. Later
Okay.
after Ramadan.
Okay.
Yeah. After Ramadan, you make up the day. That's all you would have to do, inshallah.
It's my first Ramadan.
Oh, congratulations. MashaAllah. First one ever. Have you ever fasted before?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. I've been trying to
Okay.
work on it.
All right, alhamdulillah. We have some sisters here. Make sure you guys at least exchange information and like get some of their help. But we're here to help you as well. Don't worry about it. We were just talking about like it can be challenging, but you're gonna jump into it's good to maybe have a few practice fasts before to see how your body reacts and how you feel, so you get a sense of like what am I gonna have to deal with when that time actually comes. So if you can one day a week just try to
So
fast.
like
and,
so far today, I haven't ate anything. I just drink a little stuff here and
Yeah.
there. So I just try to drink. Start
Okay.
off with just drinking things
Yeah.
up until like trying to make it all the way to the end of the day.
MashaAllah, that's good. That's
I
good.
try.
That's good. That's awesome. No worries. We're here to help. So anything you need, any information you need, just let us know. We'll help you out. We have and you get your sisters here as well. Inshallah, they'll help you out as well. Awesome. So yeah, those are missed days. You got to make them up before the next Ramadan.
You have a question here.
Oh yes.
So, like Shawwal, you join the intention this day as well?
No. Because missed day is an obligatory fast, and the other one is an optional fast. So two different things. They're two entirely different things. So and it's the full days of Ramadan plus 6 days of Shawwal. So no cheating. You can't do one day. It's not a 2-for-1 deal. You can't do one day with the intention of making it up. So the one that if you're making it up an obligatory fast, and then after that you can do Shawwal. So if you're worried, if you have a lot of days to make up, if you let's say you were sick for 15 days in Ramadan, you can do your 6 days of Shawwal first, and then spread out the rest for the rest of the year, because you have the whole year to make up your Ramadan fast. And the 6 days, that time will go by, and it's not coming back. So you can do those fasts first, and then you can make up the other ones as well, inshallah.
I'm kind of confused here. So
Yeah.
so you say you gotta make up the day. So what if it comes in where you gotta feed somebody or?
That's if you're going to be unable to fast at all. So meaning you're not capable of fasting. Then there's no way you can make up the day because you're not going to be able to fast in the future. So for that person, what you do instead of fasting is you feed a poor person for every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then they're not capable. They have an illness or they have it's old age or something else. So for them, even if there's no foreseeable future where they can actually fast because their body's not capable of handling the fast.
Because they have health issues.
They have health issues.
I
Yeah.
get you. I understand totally. Yeah, I
Awesome.
was a little confused.
Yeah, no worries. Do you have a question? Oh, no, okay. So a thing comes up really quickly, pregnant and nursing mothers. So there's a lot of explanation here, but I'm going to try to make it simple as possible. If fasting is not going to be harmful to the mother or the child, then she should fast, right? Meaning if it's 100% certain that your doctor says, oh, you're fine, nothing's going to happen, this and that, and if you can or you can go a few days of fasting, not too much, right? But if fasting is not going to be a threat to your health, to the health of your child, and you're fully confident, then because you're fully confident, you should be fasting, right? But the days, it's like, so it might be like I can fast a few days, but I can't fast the whole Ramadan, right? Maybe the doctor is like, 29 days of this is not going to be very healthy, right? You could do every other day or a few days a week. So you can get maybe some days, right? But not the entire month, right? So you have to make that judgment call on your own. But if fasting will affect the health of the mother or the child, or there's just the concern that it will, meaning you are just worried that it might actually affect the health of the mother or the child, you don't have to know for sure, you're just concerned, that's enough to give you the exemption to say, I'm going to break my fast, I'll make those days up later. I'll make those days up later, right? So I'm not going to, don't worry about the third bullet point. There were some scholars that said, if you, they try to go into a lot of detail. So if you're worried about your own health, you make up the day. If you're worried about the health of your child, you make up the day and you feed a poor person. But that's too complicated. All you gotta do is make up the day. Just make up the day because you have the right to be exempt from that. They liken the pregnant mother to being like the person who is sick temporarily, non-life-threatening illness, right? You're temporarily, it's just a matter of time. And then nursing mothers, because mothers have to eat to produce milk. If they're not going to be able to produce milk to feed their children, they can break their fast and then make up the days later, right? Later. Now, for our sisters who have a pregnancy and then they have a period of feeding their children, which can go up to 2 years, they might miss 3 or 4 years because then they get pregnant again and have another baby, right? And they might not like, why aren't you making up your days of fasting? And they're just looking at you like they want to strangle you, like, because they've had all these years of having a baby, feeding a baby, and they've been unable to fast. When you have that many missed days, and just come and see me and talk to me about it. If you have like a large number of days that are missed, where it's going to be really burdensome for you to just make those days up, then there are some exemptions as well in terms of like just feeding poor people, etc., etc., etc. Right? It's best to try and get as many days as you can, whenever opportunities you get to make those days up. If you plan it, you can probably do it, right? If you plan it, you can probably do it. But if you have like 5 years worth of fasting, that there's no way you're going to make it up even in the next 2-3 years. Like it's difficult, right? How much are you going to be able to fast? So there are some other rules for that. You can come talk to us, and we'll go. We do that on a case by case basis. All right, just some advice the Prophet ﷺ gave as well. Don't take in too much water in the mouth or the nose when making wudu. Miswak, which is the tooth stick, right, does not break your fast. The Prophet ﷺ would do miswak as well. In today's time, not all of us use the miswak. We brush our teeth. Brushing your teeth will not break your fast. And people are always like, no, you shouldn't brush your teeth when you're fasting. It's like, are you eating the toothpaste? If you're eating toothpaste, that's a problem.
You
right?
need to go to the doctor.
Yeah, that's a problem outside of Ramadan. You shouldn't be eating toothpaste at all. Like when you rinse your mouth for wudu, you're allowed to do that. So you're allowed to brush your teeth. For God's sake, brush your teeth. The breath is going to stink, right? Brush your teeth. Use a little bit less. But when we're brushing our teeth, we shouldn't be swallowing the toothpaste. That's not something healthy for us anyways, right? So just be mindful of that, even extra in Ramadan. But you're not eating toothpaste. You're just brushing your teeth, spitting it out. It's like you're making wudu. You take water in your mouth, you rinse your mouth, you spit it out. So there's no real issue with that. You can brush your teeth in Ramadan and use toothpaste. And again,
Still tasting it though.
taste doesn't break your fast. Taste is not eating. You can get a piece of dirt in your mouth. You can put your thumb in your mouth and suck on your thumb. It's not going to break your fast, right? Tasting doesn't break your fast. It's eating, drinking, which I think scholars even allowed for women when they're cooking to put it on their tongue to taste it, like spit it out. Just don't eat it, right? But that's a little stretch. You don't want to go that far. That's just kind of pushing it a little bit. But just because you taste something doesn't break your fast. And if you're fasting, go to the dentist. Unless they're like, you have to be cautious because if they're spraying water all over your mouth, it's likely you'll get water in your mouth and you can just break your fast for that day. Like but sometimes some dental procedures will not even break your fast because you're not swallowing anything. They do that little thing that you go, and it sucks all the water out of your mouth. It feels really cool. I don't know, but that's one thing as well. Be mindful of your time, right? Outside of just the fasting, just be mindful of how you use your time. The Prophet ﷺ specifically talked about behavior during Ramadan, lying, backbiting, using foul language, and then wasting time in mindless things, right? Just try to be a little bit more conscious of the purpose of Ramadan. There's a lot of rules about eating, drinking, etc., etc., but that's just to help you stay in the state of fasting so that you can focus on the bigger purpose of fasting. Right? And so the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever does not give up lying or acting on lies, Allah has no need for that person to give up their food and drink. So you can be fasting, all you're getting out of your fast is hunger and thirst. Right? You're not achieving any goals. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he said, "As-sa'im fi ibadah ma lam yaftar musliman aw yu'dhihi," that a fasting person is in this constant state of worship as long as he does not backbite another Muslim or cause him any harm. Right? And so if you're fasting, but then you're still on your phone, talking about people behind their backs and ruining their reputations and all this kind of stuff, making weird comments online, that's what we do now. Like we just go on Instagram or Facebook and like you're hiding behind it, and you're just like trying to cause problems with like. That's not what a fasting person should be spending their time doing. And Anas radiallahu anhu, the companion of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Ma sama man dhalla ya'kulu luhum an-nas." The person who is involved in eating the flesh of people. What is that? Backbite, ghiba. The person that is involved in eating the flesh of people is not fasting, because you're eating the flesh of them. The backbiting is like what? Eating the flesh of your death. That's what he's likening it to. He's like, if you're actively eating something, something. So he's like, you're not fasting. At that time, you're missing out on the spiritual purpose of the fast. I remember I was in Islamic University in Pakistan, and I got into an accident in Ramadan. There was these two kids in high school, and they were driving without a license, right? And I was driving my car, and they were coming the wrong way or something. They took my bumper off. It was Ramadan, and I got out of my car. And this was when in Pakistan, you get into a car accident, you don't just call the cops, and it's not very calm, and no, people call their friends. And 10, 15 people show up, and you got to call your people, and then they all show up, and then you got to negotiate what's going to happen. It's a whole different monster, right? It's a whole different monster. But it was funny because I remember these kids, they got out of their car and they were looking, and he was so upset. He was like, "I can't even hit you. I'm fasting." And I was like, "Well, that's pretty good." That's it's like, mashallah, good control over yourself, brother. That's the point of fasting. Is if you can't choose to be a better person, what's the point of fasting? So he's actually doing very good. By not engaging in that, alhamdulillah. And all right, that's any questions on any of the rulings? Yeah.
If you feed it poor, still you have to make that after a year?
So there's some scenarios where you have to do more, right? But if you're unable to fast at all you do is feed the poor person because you're unable to fast. So people in really, really old age, they're going to get older. It's not like they're going to be able to fast next Ramadan. It's not likely. So for them, they just feed a poor person, and they don't have to worry about making up the days. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question? You got
Yeah.
a printer? Can you print all those for me?
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you. I can email these to you too if you want.
I don't want to email, just print
To
them.
print it out? Yeah, we'll print it out for you. No worries. We got a printer back here. Inshallah, we'll make that happen. Yeah.
So in that case, is it permissible for someone to say, okay, I'll just feed a poor person rather than make up the day?
No. Yeah. So the feeding the poor person is for if you're unable to fast. الذين يطيقونه, those that are capable of doing it with difficulty, for that person, because fasting is difficult. So if fasting is not difficult, then you got to make up the day. Yeah. But again, a young person who has a chronic illness that makes them unable to fast is unable to fast. So it's not just old people. It's anyone that has a certain type of illness they would not be able to actually go about fasting. And there could be multiple. I'm not a medical professional. There could be multiple things. But if that is the case for somebody, they're not required. They just have to pay the fidya. And the fidya, if they can afford to do so. If they can't afford to do so, don't have to worry about it. Either someone can pay on their behalf if they can, it's great. But then you're only required to do what you're actually capable of doing. So if you can't even afford to do it, then that's a whole different thing. Most of the time, sometimes you can't afford it in America, but you can afford it overseas. So that's also what I tell people is but don't cheat the system. Try to keep it local as much as you can. But it's very much cheaper to feed 60 poor people or 30 people, whatever, for overseas. It costs a lot less than it does in America, right? So you can always find a way to do it, even if you can't afford to do it here. You can afford to do it, in other parts of the world. Sure. Any other questions on rulings? All right. I'm going to give you guys 2 minutes. 2 minutes to get a snack, and then we're going to introduce our 40 neighbors project. You guys ready for this? Inshallah. This is something we're gonna take your names on. We're gonna sign you up for something, inshallah.
What you signing me up for? I don't like some being soft.
Oh, you'll see. You'll see what it is.
Is it good?
It's very good. Inshallah, it's good.
Social security numbers around there.
No. We just
I
need
did
commitment. We just need commitment from people. That's all.
Y'all far away from me though.
No, you don't. So you don't have to be here to do it. That's the cool thing.
Yeah,
You don't have to be local to do this. You know what I'll do is I'll make a form while you're doing this.
Okay.
Maybe they can just
Sign up for it.
QR code, fill it out.
Oh wow, we're high tech here.
Job form's got a lot of.
switch it out, huh?
Oh yeah. What's your name, sister? Jessica. All right. Welcome. Alhamdulillah.
What's your name?
Arshad. I'm the imam for this masjid. What city are you in?
I'm in Illinois.
Cherokee. Is there a mosque there? A masjid there?
We ain't gonna talk about them folks over there.
Okay.
We're not gonna talk about them folks over there.
All right. Well, just make sure you get my information before you leave. Inshallah. We'll keep in touch. Make sure you get what you need. Inshallah.
Be my brother.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay. You can keep it. Right.
Salam. How are you? Alhamdulillah. You want anything to drink?
I got more water. Thank you. But anyways, ATT this one?
Yeah, that's right there.
You know it's forbidden to eat on the carpet.
6727. Not in this one. You're good.
Okay. I'm just making sure.
You're good.
Is there a promise?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. 770. 846. 6727. For the next one.
And also serious.
Capital NG, right?
Capital zero?
Yeah, capital. 770. 846. 6727.
That was your sister. That's your sister, right? No, that was your sister. How old are you? Oh, you could say, I know you were young. I know you were young. My daughter will be 18. She won't take us to high. She get on my nerves.
No, we just started.
he shut my mouth.
So I lived, I mean, I've been here for many years.
Was in West College. West College.
Mandigan, the
Are we ready to start?
Yeah.
Is this on? Is it working?
Yeah.
Nope. No.
Hold the button down for them.
Yes, now it is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's working. Okay. Let's move that off my other hand. All right. So I want to start off by saying that I'm used to being on the other side. I'm not used to doing any of these sort of presentations, so this is sort of stepping outside of my comfort zone. So everybody please make dua for me, okay? That I'm able to deliver the message to you. It's perfect. Alright, so I want to start off by saying that the reason to start this project, the 40 Neighbors Initiative or the 40 Neighbors Project, is so that we are able to enhance our communications, you know, with our neighbors. It is part of our sunnah to look at our neighbors as 40 neighbors, you know, 10 neighbors in each direction. It's a hadith. And so what we want to do with this project is make that connection with the broader community. So just to start with the background. These days with everything that's been going on, we feel down, you know, with the situation in Palestine. You know, we've protested, we've raised funds, we've tried to raise the awareness on social media, but it seems like we're not having the necessary impact. And so it feels kind of hopeless, and it creates this environment of they just don't care. The idea that they, you know, they are different from us, the people in our community, the non-Muslims. And what we want to do through this initiative is demolish this idea of us versus them, and create a relationship with those that are nearest to us, which is our neighbors. So we start off with this quote that I have, that in order to be heard, you have to create understanding. If we feel that what we want to accomplish is to create that connection with people, that's what we should go for, instead of thinking, well, you know, we protested, we've shared our message, nothing's working. You have to create that connection with the people, with the broader community, in order for them to understand our point of view. And so this project is all about creating that understanding between us and starting with those that are nearest to us, which is our neighbors. So the seed for the project is this hadith narrated by Hazrat Umar, may Allah be pleased with him. He narrated that Prophet ﷺ said that Jibreel kept on recommending that I treat my neighbors well until I thought that he would order me to treat them as my heirs. So clearly there's a lot of weight for our neighbors in Islam. Go ahead, sister.
In order to do that, you have to go out and talk to them so they let their guards down. Because first of all, they think Muslims are this violent place. Even on social media, they think we violent. I got in trouble on my Instagram page for just posting Allah as, you know, the higher God in Arabic, and they shut my page down, and I can't go live for like 60 days, and they threatened to take my page just because I said something about Allah in Arabic. So you got to drop the bar, and you got to make people feel comfortable, because they think we're out to get them or we out to destroy stuff. They think we violent. Automatically, when they hear the word Muslim, y'all dangerous. So you have
You're
to
already ahead of me, sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea is that we have to create that connection. And somebody can cancel you on social media, they can't cancel you in person.
Nope.
You're still allowed to go to your neighbors and talk to them and maintain good relationships, and that's part of our sunnah. So let's starting with this as a seed for the project. what we can't do is we can't count on the imams. We love our imams, we love our community leaders, and they certainly have a very big impact. But what we have to do is each and every one of us, we have to do the heavy lifting. And yesterday's khutbah, the imam was talking about the construction of Masjid Nabi, and how Prophet ﷺ was one of the hardest workers, and he outworked everybody, and he was very committed. And this is one of those things that we have to embody within ourselves as well, to be committed to a cause, to work hard, to struggle for that cause, and not to say, okay, I sent this money for this cause and I'm done. We have to follow the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and do as much as we can, and not just rely on our leadership to do this, but as individuals, we all have neighbors. So with this project, what we want to do is connect with our neighbors and start doing the heavy lifting ourselves. Okay, so where do I fit in? Where do you fit in? Where does everybody fit into this picture? How do we get started with this idea? So I want to start off by giving a public service announcement to all of the Muslims here. We have to first recognize that we are awesome. We come to the masjid, we pray, we fast, we follow our deen, we take personal responsibility, we are law-abiding citizens, we pay our taxes, we help the poor and needy. So understand that, alhamdulillah, we are good people. And it's important for us good people to connect with the community and to let them know, not through our words necessarily, but through our actions. So it starts with us. I was looking at this research done through Pew Research, and 84% of Muslims believe in God, Allah, right? And then 69% pray at least daily. So mashallah, we as a community in America, we are doing great. And I think we should be proud of ourselves and not shy away from not sharing this message or this connection with our neighbors that we can.
How is the 16% Muslim and not believe in God?
Sorry?
Identify Muslims.
Oh,
They say they're Muslims, but ask the question.
Take a look at the research study. It's fascinating. There's a whole swath of information there regarding different issues, how many people believe, how strongly they believe. On a whole lot of issues they did this research. It's worth looking at for sure. So this project is about dawah to actions, not words. And I can't restate that again and again because it's very important for us to understand that the whole purpose of this project is to make sure that we show through our actions, not necessarily through our words. What can we do? We start with ourselves, realize that we are, alhamdulillah, very awesome people, that we are upstanding citizens, that we are good people, and we want to widen our circle and follow the sunnah, revive the sunnah of taking care of our neighbors, and start with one neighbor. Keep it simple, just start with one neighbor, give them a reason to care about us, right? We can bring over food, we can see what's going on with them. If we see that they're struggling with something, help them out. One of my neighbors, he got into an accident. He didn't say anything to anybody, but he was just missing for a while. And when I reached out, we found out, I felt really bad that he had been quite injured and sick. So I just reached out and said, hey, haven't seen you in a while. I hope everything's okay. He said I was in an accident, just staying home, resting. Okay, just let him know I'm there for him. Nothing big, just so that he knows that his neighbor cares about them. Simple things. Don't have to have long drawn out conversations about deen or anything like that. Just making that connection. And treat your neighbors as you would like to be treated. Don't bother them at times that don't work. Don't try to make the connection just beyond them. With some neighbors, you will see that it'll come easily. You start talking with them, they start communicating back with you, and the conversation just carries and it flows. It's the same way within our communities. With some people you get along really well. With other people you have some difficulty. It's the same way. They're all human beings, and the idea is to keep it simple, to make that connection, and treat your neighbor as you would like to be treated. Okay, so what is this project not about? So this is not dawah through words, meaning knocking on doors, telling people I'm Muslim, this is Islam, you should come to Islam. If you don't, bad things will happen. No, this is not about that, because you live next to these people. You want to continue to have a good relationship and not let them think of you as somebody who's going to knock on their door and tell them this is the path to heaven and this is the path to hell. I'll tell you a personal story. over the weekend to our neighborhood. There are a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses who come and knock at our door, and out of being nice, sometimes I'll let them in, and they'll take up a lot of time. They'll only do dawah. They're only there to tell me their point of view. It's not about a connection. They're checking off a box that says we went door to door, we knocked on everybody's door, and we gave them their version of dawah. This project is not about that. This project is being neighborly, just being kind to your neighbor, taking care of their needs. If you recognize there's a need, just let them know that you're there for them. So just
Allegedly, they go door to door, knock on door to door, that's how they get points with,
Yeah.
ally. That's how they get points in their spot in heaven, I believe. I may be wrong though, that's what I think, I was
again,
told.
I don't fully comprehend their faith. I'm here speaking about Islam, and I just want to make the point that this is not about giving dawah to our words, but to our deeds and actions. Okay, keep it simple. Start with a smile. Just wave at your neighbor. Say hello. Strike up a conversation. This is as easy as it gets, right? And know that it's not about perfection, it's about connection. We're not trying here to become best friends. We're not saying, we want to hang out and just, have parties together. Just start simple. Just start approaching your neighbors, the ones that are closest to you. See if they're receptive. If they are, see what their needs are. If you can help them out, send over some food. Usually people like our food. Our food smells awesome and it tastes delicious, and most people love it. Just be careful of spices. Don't add too many spices. Just work with them and know their meal preferences. Maybe one of your neighbors is Hindu, and so they don't eat meat. So be cognizant of those facts and make sure that you take care of them, and just create these connections. And then what happens, right? So my wife is an artist. Clearly, I'm not an artist, so I have to use stick figures to make my point. But they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So here I created what, in my mind, is the current state versus the future state, right? So here we have a neighbor who sees that a Muslim neighbor left their trash cans out again, unhappy, upset about the fact that they're doing this, and then once we make that connection, create that empathy, we move over to the future state. This is where we want to be with our neighbors. If they see that we left that trash out there, they're concerned about us. I hope everybody's okay. And we should do the same for them, right? If we see somebody left their trash out for too long, we should go knock on their door, make sure they're okay. Help them. If their trash can fell over, pick it up. Nobody's gonna get upset at you if you help somebody out, right? Be cognizant of their property, obviously, but make sure you make that connection in the most beautiful way, with wisdom and hikmah, as our religion teaches us, and hopefully create that impact. I want to quickly move over to some of the benefits. So, if we all start to do this, where we start to reach out to our neighbors, what does it do? It makes our community more healthy. We have people who live around each other, who care about each other. And it promotes good conversations. These conversations can lead to talking about Islam, what are the differences between their faith and our faith. Those are all good things. But when you create that connection, it allows you to have that conversation without animosity, which is what the sister was saying we experience over the internet, where people just bombard us with hate or the opposing point of view. This way, within our community, we can start by promoting these conversations, but first we have to build the bridge. You have to create that connection before you can be heard. The point of this exercise is to humanize each other, to destroy the us versus them mentality, to look at our fellow man as our fellow man, our neighbor as our fellow man, and build a good community. This next point, a lot of the folks who are from other countries will understand. Your neighbors are your first responders. When something happens, before your parents can show up, your relatives, your friends can show up, your neighbors already know. If there was an ambulance that came to our neighborhood and we have an engaged community, people will leave their house and go over and check on their neighbors. People who come from other parts of the world, they see this in action. I'll tell you, when I was young growing up in Pakistan, I absolutely hated one of my neighbors. He was an elderly guy. I was probably like 8 or 9. Every time I went outside, he would hold my hand, bring me back inside, knock on the door and say, Saad's outside when he shouldn't be. It's the afternoon and he should be inside. It's not safe for him. Now, I had already asked my mom for permission. I was well within the area that I was allowed to be by my parents, but he always stepped in and said, go back inside. And now, as somebody who has kids, I completely understand why he was doing that. At the time, I absolutely didn't understand it, was upset with him. But again, he was the first responder. Before something bad was going to happen to me, he was looking out for all the kids in the neighborhood and taking care of them. So we understand when we come from different countries what this means. And what we have to do is we have to revive this and not worry about the folks in our community as being different from us so we cannot do what we have. We should try to bring the good that we already had in our communities over here. All right, what's the bonus benefit here? My communication skills have improved in talking to people who are different from me, who have different backgrounds, different faiths. It's probably what's allowing me to speak with you today. It's giving me the confidence to speak with you today. So it definitely helps to improve our communication skills by sort of stepping outside our space and speaking with people who are different from us. So we got to take it back to the hadith, right? So this is from Ibn Abbas, who reported that he heard, I heard the Prophet, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, say, he's not a believer whose stomach is filled while his neighbor goes hungry. Right? So this goes back to our faith. We have no idea who our neighbors are, let alone if they're suffering or if they have anything difficult going on. Right? So it's our responsibility to reach out for them. Alhamdulillah, we live in communities and societies where this is probably not the case, where people are going hungry. But they may be struggling with some other issue. And we should be there. They should know that if they have a Muslim neighbor, that their Muslim neighbor cares about them, that they will look after them and they'll be there for them. And that, for most people here who don't have financial issues, but maybe they have some sort of other issue that they're going through, some hardship in life, to know that somebody cares about you, even for ourselves, is uplifting, right? We're part of this community, we can come share our problems, have other people listen, offer their advice. This is exactly what we want to do. We just want to extend that community to our neighbors and let them reap the benefits of that. And for us to also, alhamdulillah, know that we are following our sunnah and doing this. Okay, so what happens next? Right, I've told you about the benefits, reviving the sunnah, all of this. When we get up here and we leave, what happens? The whispers begin. Right? So Shaitan absolutely does not want us to work on this initiative. So all the what ifs start to pop, right? What if I say the wrong thing? What if after that interaction my neighbor hates me? What should I make for them? What kind of food? What if they have allergies? So all these what ifs pop up. So what we have to do is we have to be cognizant. We have to understand that this is how things go, and we have to work hard to combat all of these what ifs to be productive with this effort. The last bullet, though, is an important what if. Okay, so that's one that needs to be addressed. I talked about that. Ask your neighbors if they have allergies. You don't want to be the Muslim responsible for almost killing your neighbor. Ask them.
That's not a good look.
That's not a good look, right?
Message on the card that says Allah Akbar.
So have some wisdom in the way that you approach them. Take care of them as you would take care of anybody who is a guest in your house, right? You make sure if they have allergies, you don't make something for them that's going to give them any problems. But for the other what ifs that pop up, set them aside, because it's about creating the connection. It's not about perfection. Okay, so where do we begin? We start with our intention. The intention is to revive the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, starting now, and taking the narrative in our own hands. We will no longer let Fox News tell our neighbor who we are. We will no longer let other people define who we are. And even as individuals, we're different, right? We come from different countries, different cultural backgrounds. The glue that holds us together is our faith. And what we want to do is to take that narrative back into our own hands. If your neighbor knows that if they need anything from you, they can come to you, ask you for that thing, and the next time they hear something bad on the news, on social media, they're going to say, nope, my neighbor is not like this. And it may just start with my neighbor is not like this. My Muslim neighbor maybe he's different. Maybe he's not like all the others. But at least you've given them a nexus to connect with, where they can come talk to you about that issue if that connection already exists. So let's take back the narrative into our own hands, and let not the imams and the leaders do the heavy lifting, but for ourselves to do that heavy lifting. Okay, so this next slide is, I took this, I saw a very nice presentation on a YouTube short. So this is Dr. Julie's presentation. I want to give her credit first. Check her out on YouTube. She does a great job. She is a trained psychologist from the UK. She created this presentation that I am recreating with my artistic capabilities. But it's important to understand this concept. So all of us, we have our comfort zone. Yesterday's khutbah, the Imam was talking about the fact that the Desi people stay with Desi people and the Arabs stay with the Arabs, right? Because that's our comfort zone. It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But that's our comfort zone. We speak the same language, we have the same culture. It's easiest for us to interact with people from similar backgrounds, even within our Muslim community. So that's part of our comfort zone. And somewhere out there is a panic zone. You don't want to be there, things are falling apart, very difficult, right? But here's the interesting thing. Between the panic zone and the comfort zone is a stretch zone. And the more you start to do things in the stretch zone, from our Islamic point of view, this is what we call the struggle. Right? So what I'm asking you to do is difficult. It's something that we're not used to. We're used to being in our comfort zone. And now, through this initiative, we're trying to move to the stretch zone. When you make this struggle, first of all, it's good because you will be rewarded, inshallah, by Allah, because we're reviving the sunnah. But the difficulty that you face also helps us with our own personal growth. So this is something amazing that happens when you engage with this, is that your comfort zone itself expands. So now you're suddenly comfortable with doing things that you were uncomfortable before. They become comfortable. And this is from understanding of our deen, that when you start to struggle, Allah sends His blessings our way. This is part of that blessing. This is also the strategy for any sort of personal growth that you want to do in your life, is to start the struggle, don't worry about perfection, and start operating in this stretch zone. And to have this understanding that I'm operating outside my comfort zone, so I'm not going to be perfect, I'm going to make mistakes, and inshallah Allah will help me out and break free and get into a wider comfort zone. So you can even start with something simple where you start talking with the Arab folks, if you're a Desi, or vice versa, to increase your stretch zone, to start that communication process, and then take it outside to our neighbors, and to continue to work in that stretch zone until it becomes comfortable, until it becomes natural. So let's just start. Bismillah. That's all that there is to it. Nothing complicated. Let's start with this initiative. Imam Arshad, I believe, hopefully has a form ready by now that people can sign up for and start. And just start with one neighbor, start with one simple connection, and next time you leave out your trash cans, your neighbor's not going to be unhappy.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can play.
Any questions
Yeah,
from
any
anybody?
questions for this, please?
Any concerns? Any what ifs popping up? Did I bore everybody to sleep?
Alright, so quickly the next step, if you don't capitalize on momentum and take action, you're just gonna walk out of here being like, that's a great idea, right? And so we're gonna go to the next, so, really quick, inshallah. If this is something you're willing to help us do, because again, one of the best thing about this, you're not gonna be tied down to the masjid to do this. This is not a one-day event where you're just gonna show up, do something, and then go home, and then you're done, right? We're trying to use our community, leverage our community to really make a change. So we got the link here, bit.ly/MJ40neighbors, or you can scan the QR code. It'll take you to the form. What we want is, to be brave, expand your circle, commit. The commitment right now is just giving us your name, your email, and your phone number so we can hound you later, right? But we're gonna send you information, but Assad is gonna do some, online virtual things where, you guys get together and you can even plan out, okay, like what is that first interaction going to look like, right? So we're gonna start doing some things where, inshallah, he'll guide you through. He's been doing this for a long time, so get together, give you some information, give you some resources, be there for each other as a community, right? So, hey, I tried to talk to my neighbor, but my neighbor didn't talk, they didn't, I waved and then they didn't wave back, right? But these are all things, the more you have a support system within the community to kind of talk to each other about, the braver and braver you'll get, right? Maybe you'll hear that, well, I've been trying to talk to my neighbor for 2 weeks, it didn't work, but on the third week, it did, right? And so that you just need that success story to kind of share. But for us to be just organized and make this an effort where, we are committing to doing this, we'll meet with each other, and it's not going to be like we might meet like once a month or something like that. We'll work that out, but just get together and say, look, were you able to talk to a neighbor? If you did, what worked? What didn't work? And then next week we'll just kind of keep talking about how those relationships are growing, how we're how we're building this stuff. So we're calling it 40 neighbors because one of the understandings of neighbor in Islam is like 40 houses to your right, 40 houses to your left, 40 houses to your front, 40 houses behind you. That's basically a small little town. That's what it is. But for us, it means that we want to have a commitment from at least 40 people so that we reach 40 neighbors, right? And over time, if each one of those 40 can bring on one more person and say, can you commit to this as well? Come join us in what we're doing, right? Now we're going to 80 neighbors. And once you start seeing how beneficial this actually is, then you're gonna, we keep inviting more and more people. The good thing is we're not limited to just this masjid. We're not limited to just, this can be something that can grow into something huge. And now we're, and I love thinking big, because you don't think big, what is it? Like think bigger, what? Go big or go home?
Go big.
Yeah, go big or go home, right? And so we're not gonna think small here. We're thinking we're planting the seed. We want to start with 40 people, but man, imagine like in a few months, if there's like a news piece on, look, hey, there's this 40 neighbors project where all these Muslims are going around and, they're already worried about us like spreading Sharia law or whatever, right? But this is the better way to kind of do it, right? But we're now making an impact to where, maybe inshallah more and more communities will be like, we want to do this too. We want to do this too. And you have bigger cities join in, and then we want to think of this as a movement. It's not just, maybe we should call it that 40 neighbors movement. I don't know. But it's a movement. We want to start changing the narrative. It's really important. That's what I was talking about. We constantly find ourselves in these situations. It's not just now. Constantly, where we're always like, how people talk about us is so out of our control, and then we're running like, chickens with our heads cut off, trying to correct all these mistakes and misunderstandings. We're constantly doing this over and over and over again. At least this gives us some control to where we can, at least the people around us can be the ones to be like, no. Like, and you'll be surprised how often people will speak up on your behalf. If they know you, they will speak up on your behalf in gatherings you cannot imagine. And it's a beautiful thing. I've seen it happen. It's a beautiful thing. We did this training one time, we did this gathering one time with a church that wanted to get their people to react to Islamophobia. So they brought in members of their church, they brought us, some members of the Muslim community, and we actually went through scenarios on how they can help intervene if they see a man harassing a woman in hijab, or if they see a Muslim getting harassed because they're a Muslim. How can they, as a white Christian, whatever person, step in and help that situation? Because it will help that situation, right? And so they were willing to do that, and it was amazing, like how they were willing to say, "We'll step in. We want to be able to do this." And so and they were learning about what would be comfortable for Muslims and not, and all this kind of stuff. So you plant the seed, and it can take amazing form. So that's what we're asking you to do, is just to make the commitment. Inshallah, we'll follow up with you guys. We're going to push you guys a little bit to go and start talking to at least one neighbor. Once you start, you'll see how natural it actually is, inshallah. And then Brother Saad's going to take lead, and you guys will have some meetings. You guys help each other out. We're going to let it grow as it naturally grows, right? But we want this to become a movement, right? We're really thinking about like how big can we actually make this? How many people can actually be influenced by Muslim neighbors? I imagine like this was the reputation. As you were talking, the reputation of the Prophet ﷺ was like, if something goes wrong, this is a guy that will come and help. And so, like in places where Muslims are active to this degree, this is their reputation. That if something goes wrong, things break, we can always trust the Muslims. And this is the reputation that Muslims have in some part of the world where they actively engage like this. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to bless the initiative. Jazakallah khair with us out for sharing this. He's the one that came to me and was like, I got an idea. I love ideas. And I was like, let's do this. But you take over, because as he said, don't burden me. That's the thing. We all have to be a part of it. Like, that's how you grow a project. It just can't be one person running the show. That's how you grow a project. Everybody has to get involved, and then it takes shape from there. So jazakumullah khair. We got salah in about 9 minutes, so we'll make the adhan. Were there any questions or concerns that you guys had? Good? Okay. So
What if you're already doing it?
then sign up. Yeah. Good. Sign up, and then help us get more people. And then help the people that are signing up. Like, we're going to talk to each other and help everybody else do it better, inshallah. Alright, Jazakallah khair. We'll share this with the community as well, so anyone that couldn't be here gets wind. But as the Prophet said, فَلْيُبَلِّغُ الشَّاهِدُ الْغَائِبِ. Let the person who was present tell those that were not. So go and tell people, hey, this new initiative starting. We're going to do this. We're going to, we're going to take control of our narrative, and then let's get people to sign up, inshallah. And I'll share the link in the WhatsApp group. Right? Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.